Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, Say What's Real TV. This review is for Hulu's Reasonable Doubt, Season 2, Episode 7, Venus versus Mars. So we open up the episode exactly where we left off last week with Jax confronting Lewis about being the father of Tony's child. He's stumbling and stammering over his words, trying to explain and worrying about if the kids can hear, and she's like, they are where they need to be. The floor is all yours, my ninja. He's going back and forth about, I was going to tell you, but I was waiting for confirmation, and Jax was like, well, what is it? Were you going to come in here and tell me, or were you going to wait? Because what it looked like to her, he was just going to waltz his trifling ass up in the house, smile up in her face like he been doing, and act like he just didn't get his side itch pregnant, right? So Jax had to let him know, look, I already know. I saw you. That same day at the hospital, I called your phone. You told me you were at work. I asked you, was the person you slept with someone I know? You told me no. And just the other day, I said, Lewis, is everything okay? You said everything was just fine. It's all about
the lies. There you go. This bitch.
And she's asking him, how can she believe anything he has to say? And had to remind him that he was the one that wanted complete honesty and keeping it 100 even through their mistakes. So of course now Jax, she has questions. She wanted to know, how did it start? He said that he ran into her at JT's party. Now, I don't know if this is an intentional lie to try to low-key use JT as a scapegoat, but we saw Lewis and Tony connect at the kids' school where he gave her his phone number at that time. Jax, she asked him when was the first time they actually did it, and he said after he saw her with Damon. And that was the night they were in the cafe. He called Jax's phone. She didn't answer, and he got in his car, took his ring off, and he contemplated for a whole day at work, what he should do, how he should move forward. Next thing you know, we see him and Tony getting it on. So Jax was like, a revenge baby. Like, that's real petty of you. So he told Jax they were not dating. They were just effing. It happened like 4 times. So she wanted to know what happened. Like, did the condom break? And he said, no, they just got drunk and high one night and just didn't use one because Tony told him she couldn't have kids. And Jax was like, and you fell for that BS? Like, really, Lewis? Like, come on. And not only that, what about contracting the STD from this chick? Like, you literally saw her having sex with other people. Like, come on, Lewis. So the mere thought of it made Jax feel sick to her stomach, and she told him just to get the F up out her face and leave. He says, where am I supposed to go? And Jax was like, do you think I give a F? And he slowly but surely got his keys to leave and was reluctant about it. But I thought this was a great scene, and they were acting. So we get a flashback scene of Jax and Lewis when they first met. We saw that in Season 1 back in October of 2007. And then we see when they actually went on their first date. So present day, we see Jax throwing up in the bathroom. I don't know if she's stressed out or what that's about. But then she's reading all the messages she's been ignoring coming from Lewis, telling her to take all the time that she needs and that he loves her and that he does deserve all of this. He wants to continue to talk it out, and she reminds him that they do have a couples therapy appointment coming up, and he wanted to make sure that she would be there, and she was like she would, and he was thankful for that. So over at the law firm, Corey and Crystal are talking, and he's asking her what she's working on. And at first she lies about it, but then she ends up telling him she's been taking classes after work because she's trying to take the LSAT exam. So Corey, he's excited for her, and she tells him, do not tell anyone, not even Jax, because she doesn't know. And Jax walks up at that moment like, what don't I know? So now it's like, more secrets. But Crystal, she plays it off and tells Jax that, it has something to do with her busy work schedule. So Corey, he goes in to see Jax with his fine ass, and he's like, is everything okay? So she tells him that she didn't get much sleep and that they lost their DV person, and he says he'll just get the person that they used on the IG Live. And he says we may need to talk about Tony, and of course her eyes got big because she's like, well, what about her? So he tells her that Lucy is going to call her as a witness. So now this puts even more stress on Jax because now she has to face Lewis's sneaky link. So we go over there to the DA's office, and Lucy's trying to give us the lovely version of herself by showing up with the bob and makeup and dangling earrings, and she's getting flowers sent to her. And she's like, well, who are they from? And the lady tells her they're from Peter Thompson. And we remember the name from when she called to see if the person was still locked up. So all of a sudden he's behind her with some more flowers, and she's like, how did you even find me? He tells her she's famous. And basically it's her ex-husband wanting his family back. So I guess she's been too consumed with the trial, which has been going on for months, that she hasn't had time to call to see if he was still in there. But it seemed to me that they would at least notify her with a letter or email or something with his release date. But nevertheless, she calls for security to have him escorted out, and she's shaking in her boots. So we see Jax and Corey in the conference room, and they're going over Chanel's case, like who she's spoken to, who's evaluated her. But you could tell Jax's mind is really not there. So Corey, he orders lunch, and he says that he figured that she didn't have time to eat. So she told him she thought that was nice of him and thought about it and said that I appreciate the gesture, but I'm going to head out early if you don't mind because I have some personal stuff to attend to. Corey wanted to know, was everything okay? She was like, kind of, but it's a long story. And I'll see you Monday, leaving him standing there looking a little confused, but still looking good. Now, one thing I notice about Corey, which women do love, he's very considerate and he's very attentive. He's like, how's your mom? How are you doing? I noticed you didn't have anything to eat. Are you good? We absolutely love that in a man, and you could tell by Jax's reaction to it all the time. She says, thanks for asking. So we head over to couples therapy with Jax and Lewis, and Dr. Webb is talking to Lewis, asking him, was he planning on telling Jax? And he's explaining that he just really wanted to have confirmation that the baby was his first. He thought he was being kind by trying to wait it out instead of causing this big commotion when he didn't have to. And I really feel like Lewis is missing the whole point of it all. When Jax asked you, did you sleep with somebody that I know? That's where your dishonesty started. And had you just said, yes, I slept with Tony, then you guys could have handled and tackled this whole pregnancy situation together instead of her being blindsided. And that's the part that you're not understanding. And even if Tony wasn't pregnant, the fact that the two of them know each other, they're in each other's face, your kids hang with each other, Jax should have known that information regardless if it was a baby or not. And that's when Jax tells Dr. Webb basically just that. Like, she has to look at Tony knowing something about her husband that she doesn't even know. So she tells Lewis she thought he was a black man that she could be proud of, a king that she can brag on. And again, I tell you, stop putting people on pedestals. But then she tells him he's just another old ninja to complain about. And then finally, Lewis expresses how he absolutely felt about Jax and all her shenanigans in season 1. And I was wondering why he never expressed it before. And he told her it was the audacity for her to sit there and reduce him to being any old ninja when she was passing out pee to ex-cons like it was Christmas. And he got over it, which is very rare, might I add. He also had to remind Jax that after Damon tried to unalive her, he was the one that held her after she woke up in the middle of the night screaming his name until she fell asleep. And he got over that. And he feels like he's the one that has to forgive. And he's the reason why they're still married. And she feels like she can treat him any kind of way she wants, but he's the ninja. Now, Lewis, you were coming off a little henpecked, but I'm glad you finally put that battery in your back to express yourself. So Dr. Webb seemed like he really didn't know how to respond to all this newfound energy, so he closes up his notes and he tells the both of them he needed to see them separately to try to come up with ways to either try to make this work or not. So we see Jax hanging out with Autumn and Sally, so I guess Sally got over whatever she was mad at the last time, so they're in another restaurant. So Jax, she's giving them the 411 on what's going on between her and Lewis when Sally expresses how disappointed she is in Lewis, as if she hasn't made a mistake and dealing with her own marital problems with Chris, which we have yet to get back to, mind you. So Jax, she tells the both of them that she's dealing with all of that, plus trying to get Chanel out of jail. So basically, Sally, being dead ass serious, says to Jax, like, get your mind right, because if Lewis is going to affect my cousin getting out of jail, it's going to be a problem. I'm like, Sally girl, go sit your ass down, please. So we see where Lewis went to lay his head over there to Sally and Chris's house to join Chris on the opposite end of the big sectional they have in there. So apparently him and Sally have yet to make up. So he tells him he has a question for him and he drops that DMX and they both have a little laugh. But Chris asks him, why didn't you just tell Jax about Tony? And he said he just wasn't ready to hear about it until he had to. So then Sally, she comes in with this battery in her back, acting like she's some big bad wolf, basically letting Lewis know that she's not feeling him. And she tries to say goodnight to Chris, and he gives her this dry ass night. and then she goes on about her business. But when are we going to get back to their issues instead of her worrying about what everybody else is doing and saying and all of that? And Sally, don't think we forgot. You are on the suspect list, sis. So Louis throws back into Chris's face something he said at JT's party in season 1, couples therapy. So Chris was like, Sally is not who I thought she was. So Louis expressed that he doesn't want to leave Jax, but it's really about his kids. You know, it makes him sad to think about not being with his family. And Chris tells him that being sad to make everybody else happy doesn't work. So we get a flashback from Louis going back to July of 2012 when Jax had just had Naima, and so she's breastfeeding. Louis, he's trying to be intimate, and she's like not in the mood. She had just made partner. So he brings up a conversation he had with JT about going to this sex club. So she ends up agreeing to do it. We see them go to this sex club. It was supposed to be a way of getting the intimacy back into their relationship. So back in season 1, when we hear Louis say, it's not like I've never seen you in that light before, when she was having sex with Will, I guess this is what he meant. So we see Jax in the bed. She is crying, going through it, when Spencer comes in and he's looking for his dad, and she lies to him and tells him that he left early to go to work. And he side-eyed her like on a Saturday, but he tells her that he's heading on out because he's going to his friend's birthday party. He goes over and hugs and kisses his mom and tells her that he loves her. And even though he didn't say anything, before he walked out of the door, he hesitated because he knows something is wrong with his mom. So we go over there to the law firm. We see Jax and Corey going over Toni being a witness, looking through her file. And we find out that there is evidence showing that Chanel knew that JT slept with Toni, but nothing proving that she knew that Toni was pregnant. So they come to the conclusion that Toni is being deceitful, but the funny part about it is Jax has all this background information and she's not letting Corey know any of it. But he tells her he wants her to do the cross-examination, and she's shocked and appalled, like, why me? And he tells her it's never a good look for a male attorney to slut-shame a female witness. So we see Jax in with Dr. Webb with her individual therapy session, and they talk about unconditional love, and Jax not really believing in that. So when I tell you Dr. Webb was in his bag this episode, he really was doing the thing. He broke it on down for her and let her know, look, given your background, what you've told me, your mom didn't choose you when it came to Paul. Your dad, in your mind, chose his addiction. So he asked her, has anybody ever told you that they love you and that they're going to fight for you and they're not going anywhere no matter what? And she had to think about it, and the answer was no, no one. And he said, well, maybe that's why you don't believe it exists, because for you, it never has. And I was like, good job, Dr. Webb, because that really gave Jax something to sit and think about. So we see Jax later on in the bed. She's alone, reading messages from Louis, and he's basically just giving her a FYI that he's over there at Chris's house. She's telling him that she let the kids know that he was working, and they're just basically trying to keep a line of communication open. And she's getting ready to ask him how he was doing, but she deleted the text and call it a night. But you can tell she's starting to miss her husband, but her pride won't let her fold just yet. So the next morning in court, we get Toni up on the witness stand, and Lucy is questioning her, and they're presenting these text messages that Chanel sent Toni when she found out about JT and Toni sleeping together. So basically, Lucy was trying to point out that Chanel made some statements in those text messages suggesting that she intentionally unalived JT by saying, thanks for doing what you did because you just made it that much easier for me to do what I need to do. So Lucy then goes on to ask her, what did she think Chanel meant by those comments? And she said she thought she just had planned on leaving JT, but then he was unalived. So then Toni, she goes on this whole spiel about how she's never seen Chanel act that way before. She just felt iced out. She wouldn't let her child play with her child. And I'm like, girl, first of all, you were sleeping with her man. Why would she continue to keep talking to you, Toni? Like, I'm confused. Are we missing something? But baby, when Jax got up there, she discredited anything that Lucy was over there trying to do. She let it be known that Toni was a liar and was sleeping with 2 married men, and she basically under oath admitted she doesn't know who the father of her child is. And the way Jax was keeping her cool but giving her that stern look, Toni knew that Jax knew about her and Louis. So Lucy, she had no further questions, and the prosecution rest. And I'm like, is that what y'all coming with those witnesses? Like, you're going to lose this case, Lucy, because that was trash. Now, did y'all catch how Tony looked at Jax when she got off that witness stand like she wanted all the smoke with Jax, and Jax was giving her the eye right back like, girl, you better be glad you're pregnant. So we get this real quick scene between Crystal and Daniel, and she tells him all about wanting to become a lawyer, but she's scared of what Jax is going to think, and he basically just encouraged her to do what she needs to do for her and don't worry about what Jax is going to think. So we go back over there inside the courtroom, and Corey brings on Dr. Culver. She's the one that did Chanel's psyche vow right after the unaliving, and she's basically saying that Chanel is having survivor's remorse where she still is in fear of JT even in his death. And Lucy, she shows another reason why she shouldn't win the case, because she puts in no effort whatsoever. She literally questions Dr. Culver from her chair, not bothering to get up not one time, and basically insinuates that there's no way Dr. Culver could have gotten all that information from Chanel in just one session. So Corey is trying to talk to Chanel, and she notices that Jax is not really paying attention to anything, so she asks Corey can she talk to her alone. So he goes out of the room. So Chanel asks her, like, what's wrong? And she tries to lie and say nothing. And Chanel was like, look, I know you. What's the matter? So she breaks down and tells her that Lewis has been lying to her, and basically he could be the father of Tony's child. Chanel was apologetic and wondering, why did you have to cross her? Why didn't Corey do it? And she said, like optics, it would look better if she did it. And in addition to that, he had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. So Jax is apologizing because she can't stop crying. She can't get it together. And she's like, look, you're over here fighting for your life. And Chanel says, look, what's that old saying? Check on your strong friends. Like, we failed at that before. Let's not let it happen again. But Chanel was still amazed that Lewis would actually mess with Tony and renamed her Honey. And they had a little good chuckle about it. So Chanel tells Jax that no matter what she's going through, she always will remind people who she is, and that is Jax Mofo Stewart. And they hug it on out. So later on that night, Jax gets home, and Lewis is actually there cooking for the family. I think she's a little shocked to see him there, but they greet each other and they ask each other about their work day, and she tells him that she misses him. And right after she says that, Lewis just slaps all of us in the face and punches us in the gut. And he says that he received the DNA test results and the baby is his. When you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. When I tell you I was literally floored, my jaw dropped like, really? Like, oh my God, like this is really happening. So right at that moment, the kids come out and she doesn't have time to react or do anything, so she plays it off. She smiles and loves on her kids and sits down to eat dinner as if nothing is going on. And the whole time she is devastated. Lewis is over there laughing and playing with the kids like he doesn't have a care in the world. So she finds a quiet, dark room to go in because she can't keep up the facade any longer. So Lewis, he comes behind her tapping on the door asking her if she's okay. Like, are you for real? So she tells him, just leave me alone. And she just lets it all out. She just lets it all out. I'm like, Lewis, did you go over there and cook purposely to try to ease the blow of the news? And knowing doggone well that the kids were going to be there, and I don't recall them ever arguing in front of them. So she has to bottle up all these emotions inside, hoping that they don't hear her or notice anything. And even though Jax, she is not perfect. She's done a lot of things, especially in season 1. But I feel like coming into season 2, they were supposed to be on an even playing field. She was putting in the work, trying to be vulnerable, trying to do the right things, trying to be honest, and he's over there lying and now has a whole baby on the way. So the next day at the firm, we got Jax and Corey going over all these different files, trying to find a way to present them to the court. Accounts that Chanel's name is all over, but she supposedly doesn't know anything about the money. So Crystal, she comes in and Jax asks her, is she able to work late? And she just automatically just says yes, like, do whatever Jax wants her to do. And Corey, trying to get her to, do what she needs to do for her, says, Crystal, don't you have something to do? She tells him no, and he looks at her like a dad, like Papa Bear. Are you sure you don't have anything to do? And Jax is looking at both of them like, wait a minute, what is going on? So Crystal, not trying to be disappointing to Jax, she goes all around the world and and Jax is like, Crystal, what is it? So she finally tells her that she's studying for the LSAT. And to her surprise, Jax thought it was amazing and says, yes, go home and study. So Corey tells Jax that he knows that she has to get home to her family. He'll go ahead and stay behind and handle everything. And she's like, I can stay. Just let me make a quick call. And he's looking at her smiling. And I'm like, So she calls Lewis to see if he can stay with the kids, and he says that he has crunch time at work and he has therapy later. So she kind of gets upset, and they kind of go back and forth, and he makes some comment about his job being important, and she throws at him something about it's going to be extra important when his side baby gets there. And she ends up telling him, don't even worry about it. I'll get my mom to do it. You have a good night. And she hung up. So we go back to 2017 with another flashback. This time we see Lewis preparing a presentation for work, and he's asking Jax to see what she thinks about it. So once he starts the presentation, Jax suggests something else, and he was like, well, I got to do it this way, otherwise you won't know what I'm talking about. So then he starts, mumbling and stumbling over his words, and she's like, well, you need to say it with your chest. You don't sound too confident. And that's when he gets in his feelings, and he's like, I am confident. I've been doing this all this time. And she's like, well, I'm just trying to help you get the promotion. He's like, I don't need you to help me get it. I can get it on my own. And he tells her she just doesn't have to be so hard all the time. And she was like, okay, cool. And she went back to doing what she was doing with her job. Now, I really didn't see anything wrong with what Jax was saying to him, but the real question is, did he ever get the promotion? So then Lewis, he goes to see Dr. Webb for his individual therapy session, and he lets Dr. Webb know that it is confirmed that he is the father of Tony's child, and him and Jax haven't had a chance to really talk about it, and he's saying that he wants his marriage, he doesn't want to lose his wife. And Dr. Webb was like, well, did you tell her that? So he goes on this mini rant saying, why does he have to always do everything first? He has to take a backseat to her job. He has to forgive an affair, be understanding of her trauma and what's not fair to him, as if he is doing oh so much, and she doesn't have a right to feel the way she feels about this whole Tony situation. So because Lewis is going on and on like he's doing oh so much to keep this marriage together, Dr. Webb reminds him that he was the one that didn't even want to go to couples therapy. It was Jax. So I really felt like what Dr. Webb was saying to him was going in one ear and out the other, because he still was complaining like, it feels like I still have to do something. And he's telling him to focus less on feelings and more on the intentions, because that's what he wants Jax to do in his situation. And Dr. Webb had to ask him, do you want to be right or do you want to be married? So we go back over there to the law firm where Jax and Corey, they're burning the midnight oil. And Corey actually tells her about the case with Isabella Torres and why he feels like he is the cause of her being in jail for the rest of her life. So he explains the situation and how it went down and says that's why Chanel's case is important to him, because now he has to save 2 lives. So Jax saw that he was taking it pretty hard, so she tried to comfort him and start rubbing his back and went in for a hug, and he quickly hugged her back. So they're embracing each other all passionately and getting real close, and she's like, I should go. And he says, do you really want to go? And he grabs her hand, and I'm like, So she tells him no, and he says, good, because I don't want you to go. So he comes up behind her all seductively, and he's kissing her gently on her shoulder and licking her ear, and I'm like, good Lord, have mercy. So Jax felt it too, and she was like, we shouldn't do this. He was like, what are we doing? Just tell me to stop and I'll stop. So she turns around, and all of a sudden she starts having all these flashbacks about Damon, about Lewis, and just reflecting on how the last little affair went and how it damn near almost ruined her life. And she basically had to get up out of there. Now, shout out to Jax for being very, very strong and resisting all that chocolate temptation that was all up and through on the back of her neck and stuff. But I must say, I'm proud of Jax. And I know 2 wrongs don't make a right, but baby, Corey would have had me all up and through that office that night. So we see Lucy Wargo leaving work, and she gets served some papers on the street. When she opens the envelope, it's a summons from Peter Thompson trying to get custody and child support for their son, John. We go over there with Jack. She makes it home, and there's no one there. And we hear that Luther Vandross' House Is Not a Home jamming in the background. and she's going all over the house, cleaning up behind the kids. She starts reminiscing about her and Lewis's wedding day. We had Lewis over there on the sofa, and he's over there reminiscing about everything while Luther is blaring in the background, and he can't take it anymore. So he hops in his car and he goes back home. And right in that moment, Luther is saying, "I climbed the stairs and turned the key," as Lewis is running up the steps. Jack, she opens the door and he says, "Can we talk? I have something I want to say." So he gets inside and he basically professes his love to her and tells her he loves her without conditions. And every day he fights for her. He fights for their marriage. He fights for their family. He admitted to her that he did make a mistake out there running them streets. He's not about that life for real, for real. That's why he didn't know what to do about it when it all went down with Tony. But he does say what he is a loving father and devoted husband who loves his family hard. And he tells her that he exists to love her and that he cannot function without her. And while crying, he tells her that she doesn't have to be with him if she doesn't want to. He can live with that, but she can't stop him from loving her. So he goes to leave, and she basically stops him. And that's where the episode ends. Woo, child. This week's episode, when I tell you they were acting, and it was a good one. What did you all think about it? Drop down in the comments and let me know your thoughts. Do you think when Jack stopped him at the end of the episode, we'll all be forgiven? Will she tell him to come home and accept his break baby? And will she take what he was saying at the end of this episode and equate it to what Dr. Webb was trying to tell her about someone actually standing up and fighting for her, actually choosing her? Next week's episode can't get here fast enough. But as always, you guys, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.